Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström, the author of sewing books including Master the Copper Stitch Machine, Sewing Activewear and Fit for Knits, and I also have a YouTube channel and a sewing pattern line under the name The Last Stitch.
And my name is Malena Hjerpe, and I work as a freelance pattern maker, and I also create my own PDF patterns under the name Hazelhen Patterns.
And today's episode topic is your suggestion, Malena, and it kind of is a good, it works very well with the kind of topics that we love to discuss, which is mostly sewing related, sewing knits and fabrics and understanding fabric properties. And you pointed this out. We haven't really discussed this topic. So what is the topic for this week's podcast? Sorry, I'm a little bit tired.
Yeah, no, I felt like, haven't we talked about it? But we haven't had like a full episode just solely about it, like the full picture. We have talked about it in different formats, but knitting structures, knitting structures, and now when it comes to fabrics, because it feels talking about knits, it can be a little bit, you can have a knitted sweater that is made differently from knitted fabric, that the fabric then is produced by the meter, by the yard. It's like two totally different kinds of machines, but of course they are both knitted, so that could be a little bit confusing sometimes, also for the professionals.
Yeah.
The terminology is a little bit, intertwining there sometimes. But we have talked about the material a couple of episodes ago, like cotton, viscose, silk, like what it's made of. But the knitting structure, it is how it is actually knitted. And this also affects the fabric a lot. So this is really good thing to be aware about when you are working, when you are sewing and choosing the right fabric for your project. Because woven, I feel like it's a little bit, like it doesn't vary that much. It can have a little bit of stretch or non-stretch, but it's still like woven, and sure, the drapiness of the fabric can be different. But for knit, the stretchiness, the recovery, the structure, it varies so much more compared to woven. So that is why I feel like it's even more important that when you have a project for with knitted fabrics, it's so important, so crucial to choose the actual right fabric. Do you agree?
I totally agree with you. And we always say that then all knits are not created equal. There's a massive difference between different type of knit materials and how they behave, and as you say, the structure, and of course how they will work with different type of patterns. So you cannot assume just because the fabric is marked as a knit fabric that it will work for all type of projects that is labeled knit. So unfortunately not. And I'm really, really excited to talk more about this topic. And I know you are very knowledgeable in this area. So I will just ask some very simple questions, and I will just I will just enjoy listening to your expertise on this topic. But first of all, Malena, when we say structures, could you name some examples that our listeners might be familiar with when we talk about structures?
Yeah, so it's a type of knit. For example, a rib, 1x1 or 2x2 rib, or single jersey. Usually we say jersey about all knitted fabric that are produced by the meter. So that's why I might say jersey every now and then. But single jersey, then it's knitted on a single bed. That is like the most common knit, I think. But there are also more complicated knitted structures, like different jacquards. Maybe not so common by the meter, it's more sweater knit that are jacquards, but there exist, and then it's like a pattern knitted into the fabric. Ponte di Roma, it's so many different type of. So it's basically how it is knitted. It's not the material, what it's made of, but it's how it is knitted that we are gonna deep dive into today.
So where do we start? Well,
I think a good, this is obviously very technical nerdy now for the when you have been to suppliers and to explain a little bit. We have talked about this before as well, the different machines. And why is this important? Well, it's just to understand that when you knit a sweater, then you have a flat bed. The needles are like on a row basically, and it's like crochet needles, it looks like. And you basically knit a sweater like you shape it. You don't cut and sew it. You shape knit it, and then you link it together. So there's basically no waste. But when you are creating fabric, then you do it on a circular knitting machine. So all the needles are like in a round circular basically, and then the sledge is going around that. So for every how do you say, every time it's circled, it has knitted like it could be 24 rows basically that is knitted. So it's a really fast process, and it produces fabric like in a really fast way. So this is why jersey by the meter can be a lot cheaper compared to a knitted sweater. Because you can produce a lot faster, and then you cut and sew garments from that basically. And I would say the absolute most common fabric knit structure is single jersey, which means it has been knitted on a single bed, single rounded bed, and you have this structure of very flat from the how do you say, the right side, and it creates like these small loops look on the wrong side. So it's very easy to tell what's right and what's wrong side. And very characteristic of this is the edges are rolling in different directions as well, like the how do you say, the horizontal edge rolls one way and the vertical edge rolls another way. But I think this is the most common knitted structure for jerseys. Single jerseys is the most common one. If you ask like, I want to buy a jersey, then this is what you mean basically.
Yeah, and these most common, especially t-shirts, regular t-shirts, are almost always done with single jersey. Like tight-fitting stretch tops that are made perhaps with a cotton or rayon lycra mix. They are usually always single jersey, and they are also usually quite lightweight fabric, so they're, I guess, more suitable for that kind of garments that are, quite simple. I mean, they gave for tops, for instance, because they can be a bit more lightweight. For if they're a little bit heavier, I guess they could work for dresses as well, but maybe not ideal for pants, I guess, because single jersey it lacks sometimes a little bit of stability unless it's a bit thicker. So that's a good idea, to give an idea of the properties of this kind of very common fabric. Am I right, Malena?
Yeah, no, totally. And the composition of the material can be different. It could be 100% cotton, then it stretches, but it doesn't stretch that much, and the recovery might not be so good, and then it may be more suitable for a bit more loose-fitted t-shirt. But it could also have cotton elastan mix, so it has like 5-6% elastan in it, spandex or lycra, which help a lot with the how stretchy it is and how recovery it is. And then you can use it for leggings or tights and really tight fitted garments as well. So it's really a combination here of the structure and the material composition, like depends on what kind of garment it's suitable for. But yeah, as you said, it's usually not that thick, so it's not. Of course, you can make a dress out of it, but then if you want to have a more structured dress, or like, for example, your ivy cardigan, a more like structured cardigan, you want a little more thicker fabric, like a Ponte di Roma or some sort of sweatshirt fabric. But a single jersey, that's the staple of the staple fabrics. It's the most common one.
So that makes me curious. So what is the difference between single jersey and double jersey or double knit, which we also is quite common when you're shopping for fabrics?
Yeah, so double knit, there could be a lot of different types of double knitted fabric. Basically, it means that you knit on both needle beds, like they are two parallel to each other. one of the most common one that you think of is probably a rib. So that's basically one needle is used on, how do you say, each and every other needle are used on the different beds, which creates 3D structures, and it gives a lot of stretch and quite good recovery, especially if you have cotton elastan or elastan mix into it. So it has, you don't have to have only 1x1, it could be 2x2, 3x3, or some other type of structure. But then it basically looks the same from the right and the wrong side, because they are equal, basically. So this is very common to have in neck, as neck bands or cuffs or something, because of the good stretch quality it has. But there are lots of different other types as well, that when you use double both of the beds. For example, Ponte di Roma, as we talked a little about, then it has a little bit more complicated knitting structure, like how it's used on each row, like it's knitted a little bit differently, like if you use a right or wrong side, or like between them. So it's a little bit more complicated how you make it, but then it becomes quite a thick fabric, a little more structured fabric. You can make it suits beautifully to more structured garments or dresses or pants even. So that could be a really good option for those kind of things. Then we also have another type of structure, what is called an interlock. Interlock and 1x1 rib are actually very similar when you just look at them. It's really difficult to just tell by looking at them, like which one is which. Interlock usually is not as stretchy, and it doesn't have as good recovery as 1x1 rib, but it can be really tricky to actually know which one is which. An interlock, it doesn't roll as a single jersey, it just doesn't fold up, and its interlock is super soft, perfect for example, kids wear, babies wear, because it has super soft surface. But it grows when you wear it. As I said, it doesn't have like that great recovery. So for example, if you make a pair of leggings in interlock, you are gonna have a saggy bum and knees, and it's not gonna be it's not suitable for that. But for a little more looser trousers, like a little bit more palazzo pants look, then interlock could be a great choice. So really choose. This is like where it's so important to choose wisely your project and your fabric.
Yeah, and interlock, I love wearing interlock, but as you say, it really expands. And I should also give a tip: if you own a cover stitch machine or using the binder attachment, or you can also of course use that for your sewing machine. And the binding is where you cover the edges with a narrow strip of knit fabric, and actually using interlock for that purpose is actually excellent, because that as you say, it has less recovery, but that works beautifully when you're finishing the edges. So it's usually easier to work with, and also a little bit more lightweight compared to a rib knit, which is a little bit heavier and a little bit bulkier. So if you have interlock, that could be a good idea to use that to cover the edges of your neckline or your sleeves with a binder attachment. So that's another tip for you if you're unsure of what to use interlock for, because it is, as you say, Malena, a little bit limited in its uses compared to regular jersey and double knit, which is and rib knit, of course, because these are much more versatile materials. Yeah,
you need to have a little bit more mindful when how to finish the edges. For example, we talked about this in our episode Hemming Knits. For example, a lecture seam might be really suitable for interlocks, and if you have a cover lock, then fine, but using a twin needle on an interlock, it might start to grow quite a lot and will not have really, really great recovery. So you need to pay a little bit more attention to your finishings then. And I actually, before this episode, I was like, should I do some research now to collect all the different types of fabric? But then I remember we actually have this in our book, the Fit for Knit books. You have put this together with some beautiful pictures of to show the different kind of fabrics. So I'm gonna take the next fabric here, sweatshirt knits. That's also, I think, very common when you are sewing. Here you can have very different kinds of sweatshirt knits as well. Usually from the right side it looks like a single jersey, but from the wrong side it has created more loops. And this gives it a bit more thickness, the fabric. It becomes a little bit more warm when you wear it. And this could be, the inside could actually be both brushed and not brushed. Like if it's not brushed, then the loops are very visible. But if it has been brushed, this is done with like both chemicals and with actual brushes. Like it has this like really fluffy, hairy, so soft surfaces. It does the stretchiness and recovery of the fabric. It's damaged a little bit in this brushing process. So a regular sweatshirt with the loops on the inside might be a little bit more stretchy. So that's also just a good thing to have in mind, like how much is it an oversized sweater, then it's no problem to have brushed on the inside. But if it's more tight fitted, then it might be better to choose the one that it has not been brushed. But working with the sweatshirt fabric, I mean, that's a charm, because it's a little bit more stable and it's more easier to control compared to like thinner single jersey fabrics. Don't you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it's so nice. They have the perfect amount of stability and stretch, so it's very hard. It's actually hard to fail with sewing sweatshirt fabrics, because also because we talked in previous episode the challenge of hemming with knits, because as you say, Malena, it tends to grow and it can become wavy, or they could be puckerings. There are different types of challenges, but I do find that when working with sweatshirt fabrics, you have all these kind of options. You can use a twin needle, you can use the blind hem stitch, which I love to use for hemming thicker knits, and sometimes even you could also be successful with using a straight stitch, because if the area isn't too stretched out, you can actually be successful. For instance, if you want to top stitch, if you're doing a hoodie with the pockets in the front, you can usually sew that using a regular straight stitch on your sewing machine, because it's so stable, which is why it has the best properties, I would say. It's a great mix of woven and knits, because you do get the softness and the stretchiness from knits, but it's pretty much as easy or even easier to work with than a lot of woven fabrics, in my opinion. And you can sew jackets, you can sew sweaters, you can sew pants, and you can add details, for instance, as well. I mean, you can add pockets, you can add patch pockets, inseam pockets. You have all these options that we don't have on a lot of other knits. For instance, it's really difficult and probably not advisable to start to add, pockets on a thin single jersey, for instance, because that's going to be a huge issue. And even patch pockets might not work. But here you have all these options, and you can, basically sew pretty much anything, I would say, like a structured garment. And I've seen for a while it was also popular with like a tailored jacket made with sweatshirt fabrics. That was kind of popular in Sweden. We had all the welt pockets and the darts shaping and the lapels, I think it's called, the collar, and it was such a cool style, and it was all made out of knit fabric, which brings to the point of how sweatshirt is such a wonderful fabric to work with, and pretty much the endless possibilities.
Yeah, because it gives you more structure, and it's really a great fabric to work with. And usually you combine it also, if you make like a regular sweatshirt, you combine it with, you make the neckband and the sleeve cuffs and bottom cuffs in rib then, to give it more that, it holds it in a little bit better. The ribs are obviously more stretchy, so it can be made tighter, but you still have no problem when you're getting dressed. So you usually combine a sweatshirt with ribs for regular sweatshirts. But no, it's a great fabric, and this can be, I mean, also of course made in 100% cotton and or different types of mixes. Usually when you have a melange color effect, like that, then it's not like a solid color. It has like this, melange, gray melange is the most common one. Usually it's then a mix of polyester and cotton just to get like this color effect. You can have it a melange effect also in 100% cotton, but it's usually a little bit more expensive to get that nice color effect. So that's why they do polyester instead, which sometimes, then the garment can start to peel a little bit more easily and not as nice, not as breathable as 100% cotton. But that's like a good thing to keep in mind, that if it's a melange, check what the fabric, what the material composition is, because usually it might be a little bit polyester mixed into there.
Oh, that was such a... Because I've thought about that, because you do see a lot of fabrics having usually between 20 and even up to 50% polyester when they have this marl effect or heathered effect. So I was always really curious on why that reason was, and I thought it was just to save money or maybe make it more durable.
Yeah, I mean, basically it is, yes, it is to save money, because making 100% cotton and do that kind of dye effect, it's more expensive then. So that's why it's easier than quicker also to dye it, because the polyester and the cotton reacts differently to the color, and that's how you get the melange effect. But the real melange effect in 100% cotton, you can of course achieve that as well, but it's a little bit more complicated because it's same kind of material but different dyes than, or like you want it to be lighter and darker dyes, so it's of course more complicated than just coloring it 100% the same color. So that's just a good thing to have in mind, depending.
That's
on
interesting. Yeah, another thought I've had having about this mix, the polyester cotton mix, which is obviously quite common regardless if you're buying fabric or ready-made garments made with sweatshirt fabric, is there, because sometimes, especially with pants made from sweatshirt knit, again, there will be a little bit of bagginess in the bum area and the knee area when you start wearing it, which kind of, it's part of the charm. We're talking about like regular tracksuits. But I wonder if, because my thought, and I might be wrong, is that if the sweatshirt fabric is made with 100% cotton, the risk for bagginess is bigger than compared to if there's a percentage of synthetic materials, because that can keep the fabric in check. Am I wrong there, or do I have a point?
No, you absolutely have a point. It might not. I think polyester helps that as well a little bit, because it's a dead material. It doesn't change when you wear it. It doesn't stretch out in the same way as cotton might expand, and then when you wash it, it shrinks a little bit again. Synthetic fibers don't do that. It's dead basically. Usually, if you have like these kind of material that you really don't want to expand, you want to keep it their shape, you add nylon, polyamide, or spandex, lycra, elastan. Like that's the thing that helps the recovery. And if it has a great recovery, then it doesn't grow that much. So yeah, it's sometimes there is a point, like a good point, to have synthetic fibers, even though we, don't want to use them too much. But sometimes they do have a benefit. So this is like really, if you want to have a tight-fitted garment, and especially on trousers, you have to check the recovery on a fabric, and it's easy, just pull it, basically pull it quite hard, and see, does it go back to the original shape, or does it stay stretched out? That kind of gives you an indication how good or bad recovery it is.
Yeah, that's very good. These are the invaluable tips, I think, for any home service as well, because we do have that choice now. If you have an idea of a garment, and just making these informed choices that Malena are talking about now is going to make such a huge difference on the end result. So, as you say, because if you're making something that you want a little bit more structured, then it probably will make sense to use a mixed fabric in these cases with the sweatshirt fabric, because just the way it is, you say it's a living material and it kind of expands, which is why we love working with cotton. It's so soft and supple, but it does comes with certain drawbacks. And if you want to make a pair of pants that could feel a bit more dressy, then you probably are, it's beneficial to use some type of mix. And also I have a sewing pattern for knit fabrics, the Vida pants, and you can sew these in sweatshirt fabric or French terry, but I would definitely also recommend that it has a lycra component or a little bit of a polyamide, because it just keeps the shape, and you don't want that saggy bum if you want to wear the pants in a more dressier situation than just do running errands or lounging at home. So it all depends on the purpose as well. I mean, if my cozy pants at home, I don't mind if I have huge knees when I sit down or the bum is sagging. I don't mind, but when I go outside maybe go to work, that's not kind of where I would feel comfortable of having that kind of expansion in the wrong places, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think Punto di Roma, for example, that's also a little bit thicker fabric. That kind of knitting structure, it doesn't have that much stretch recovery built into the actual structure. So I think that's also like why that's, I think, never 100% cotton. It's always like some sort of mix, usually have some elastan in it and usually some polyester kind of mix, because otherwise it would just grow too much. And because of this material mix combined with the structure, it gives it really, I mean, it's a great pants fabric, for example. It would be great for the Vida pants and or a more fitted dress. So synthetic fibers are not always bad. They do have their place when depending on the fabric structure and garment, basically, I would say. But other structures, we talked mostly about sweatshirts now that has a little more volume. Some other fabrics that has these kind of loops more on the outside could be velour or terry. Velour can also be woven, but could both be woven and knitted. And then basically has been created this loop on the outside instead and cutted, so they are hairy, basically. Or how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's like a plush, fluffy surface, which is very. It's like almost feel like fur in that nice, cozy way. It's nice. I like to. It's like you pet a nice cat. It's a similar feeling, especially if you pet it in the right direction. Because as we will probably mention, the fact that these loops they are directional. So if you pet them in one way, it's going to feel really smooth, and if you pet it in the other way, it's going to provide resistance and friction and not feel as nice as cozy.
Yeah, and here it is so important that you cut your fabric, all the pattern pieces, you have them in the right direction or in the same direction. Like if it should be up or down, personal preferences, but how do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel? But it needs to be, you need to commit to a direction, because otherwise it is gonna, the way the light is hitting the fabric, it is gonna look like it is two different colors, like a lighter or darker color. So it is super important that you have the same direction, so you get the same shiny effect basically on the fabric, because otherwise it's gonna be a patchwork.
Yeah, it's shocking. I think everyone is. If you haven't tried it, just check that out, because at first glance it might look so similar, but if you put two pieces together in opposite direction, it's like two different colors and two different materials. It's fascinating. And it's the same with corduroy. It's another example where you have to cut in the same nap direction. I think nap is one of the words that's used in English for this. So there are definitely velvet, corduroy, velour, all these kind of fabrics. You need to cut every single piece in one direction, as Malena says. Very, very important to remember.
Yeah. Have you done any sewing in these kind of fabrics, or have you just been watching?
No. I've sewn plenty of. I love cotton velour. It's one of my favorite materials, and I've sewn everything from like cozy pants. And when my kids were small, I made like a lot of like t-shirt dresses made with velour. It's a very popular material for kids here in Sweden, and who have not remembered the UC Couture velour tracksuit?
Yeah, they made a comeback now. Also.
Yeah,
we are so old now that our childhood styles could be vintaged.
It's so cool. And if anyone is wondering what is velour, just think about that. Think about Paris Hilton and think about the 90s or like really early 2000, really drop waist and really high cut sweatshirt jacket made with this velour in pink or baby blue, black, and sometimes it was kind of embroidered. I think the bum was embroidered with the word juicy.
Yes, juicy. Yep.
So
very much flashbacks now.
So I've because I never went to full out and bought a UC Couture, but definitely made my fair share of velour pants, and I really like wearing them. And again, there is so I don't know, they perhaps made a good material mix, those UC Couture tracksuits, because my experience when working with this, and usually it's a mix between cotton and a little bit of polyester, I think. Once you wear it, I definitely experienced a saggy bum and the saggy knees when I was wearing it. So I didn't have that kind of tight fitting experience after a few hours or a few days of wears. But again, so for me, I think it's a little bit better for a more loose fitting style, like shorts, like all the kind of like pyjama shorts and everything like that. That I think is a fantastic material. But I would not recommend it for a tight fitting. Unless there's a way
unless
of
it has
doing the
elastan or cotton lycra in it. It has to have some anything that is really tight fitted in general should have a little bit of elastan in it to help the recovery. It could be a little bit exception for pointelle knits. Those are they are like holes knitted into the fabric, like a decorative small holes or interlocks. Like in some cases, it's suitable to not have lycra in it, but otherwise, general rule, if you want to have it tight, there should be some stretch that helps the stretch and recovery. Otherwise, it's just gonna keep on growing basically. But what more do we have? I mean, there are lots of different type of also, of course, lace and mesh, and this is another type of knit. Then all of these knits we have talked about are like knitted on the weft, like they are. The fabric is growing by the height basically, but you can also knit. How do you say? Warp knitted, then you are knitting in the other direction. It's not as common at all. I think it's usually like different kind of mesh, different kind of lace, different kind of, I don't remember what it's called now, like this tracksuit kind of fabric. Those are also knitted on the warp. But usually it's
Rochelle knits, the one, the Missoni, I think maybe those are Rochelle knits, the kind of wavy knit.
Those as well. So they are definitely, like, obviously they exist, but it's not as common, I would say, in the regular home sewing. So I think like these are the most common one. Can you come up with any other? I have a couple of ones, and I think they're and of course we highly recommend that you get our book Fit for Knits, because Malena is also, she previously held up the book because we have a fabric guide there for all type of knit fabrics, and of course what type of garments they are most suited for. Now Malena is holding up this where you can see, because that is again what we say, you need to pick the right fabric for the right garment, because that is one of the key factors for success. But one knit that you haven't mentioned that I am a big fan of is piqué, or the waffle knits, the kind of structure. Yeah, right. Yeah, those there are several different types of piqué knits as well. So yeah, then it's like a knitted, like a structure is knitted into the fabric. Really beautiful effect, and they don't usually, they have a little bit of stretch, but they are a little bit more structured. So they are not suitable for the most tight-fitted garment, but a little bit more relaxed fit. They are perfect for, and they you can sew beautiful details like plackets and I mean a regular classic piqué type of polo shirt. It's great fabric that as well.
Yeah, it's really, really versatile because, again, it behaves a little bit more like a woven fabric. There are also options where you can have, there's a lycra content, and then you can get a more tight-fitting piqué garment. But this is a good fabric, especially if it has a little bit more stability. Good, not just for tops, you can also do it for dresses, for instance, because then you get a little bit of that stability that's so nice to have and can be a little bit challenging. So I actually really like piqué. And I have one in my stash now that I tend to turn into a polo shirt someday. Beautiful navy piqué, because I do wear a lot of that. I'm a big fan of polo shirts. I think it's such a classic style. And to mention brands like Lacoste or Fred Perry, or I think Polo by Ralph Lauren, those are all iconic. And it's not that difficult. I've sewn a couple of polo shirts myself, and once you get the hang of the placket, there are a couple of different methods of doing that, then it's not that difficult to sew either. It's a nice challenge, and because of the fact that the piqué fabric does have a bit more stability and not much lengthwise stretch and just a smaller amount of crosswise stretch, as you say, Malena, it's actually doable to add things like a placket or a pocket, because this is so it's a good fabric and a little bit underutilized, I think, in the sewing community. And I wish we could see a larger range of that, because it's a nice way of adding some excitement because of the structure, and also pretty easy to sew. And also, of course, it usually doesn't require addition of synthetic materials.
No, it's not as common. I mean, very regular in ready to wear, but maybe not as common to buy by the meter. It's I haven't sewn anything, but I also love. I mean, it's a classic polo shirt. That's a classic style. So I do love those. And then we have, of course, there are like. When you are more into sportswear, can be very like different in kind of fabrics. They are like all these like 4-way stretch, fleece, those kind of fabrics as well that are more, what do you say, high performance.
Performance
fabric. Performance wear. Those can also be great to sew with and work with. There are a lot of discussions about the fleece. If it's in polyester, it's not good for the environment, because a lot of microplastics are being, when you wash it, small like microplastics are being released into the water. But I have seen also 100% cotton fleece fabric. Really nice, such a nice hand feel. So that could be a great substitute for the polyester one. And also, I mean, obviously it breathes in a completely different way compared to the polyester. So so that could be I had my eye on that one. I haven't got a chance to sew anything with it yet, though.
I agree with you. I think I do have, of course, some fleece jackets. I've sewn a couple of myself, but honestly, I do prefer either cotton. And also, if you're like me and Malena, we live in the colder parts of the world. I've also seen wool fleece, which is an absolute dream of a fabric as well. But it was so pricey, I didn't buy it. But I was severely tempted, because that would be my dream, because wool is such a nice functional fabric, because it does have some properties that kind of wicks away moisture until at least a point. So for me, for instance, when I run in the wintertime, and then I always use a thin wool as the
base
layer. Base layer. Yeah, exactly. and that works perfectly fine because I'm not outside hours and hours and hours. So for me, that I prefer that much over using a fleece equivalent, for instance, or a thin layer or something synthetic. So I'm a big fan of using wool for, of course it's not suitable in the colder climate, warmer climates, but as an option for fleece, I think it's difficult, as we talked about previously. It can be difficult to locate good quality wool knits, but I think it's worth the investment because it's a fabric that is extremely durable and doesn't have that negative impact on the environment. I mean, again, we are not experts on environment. There are, of course, complications with every type of production, and there can be, of course, valid points about that. But as wool, at least, is not perhaps a contributor to microplastics, which is something that destroys our oceans, and it's a big problem in the world, among lots of other things that are residues from the way we are living.
Yeah, no, I think wool, if you are looking from a more sustainable point of view, wool is one of the best fabrics. So yeah, it's definitely a good option there. But yeah, lots of different knitting structures, and common for these now, if they are like by the meter, they have been knitted on a round knitting machines. Just want to highlight like good quality, bad quality. Of course, the faster the knitting machine goes, the cheaper it gets. So usually, as I said in the beginning, when the sledge has gone a whole round around the knitting machine, it doesn't knit one row. It knits maybe 24 rows at one go. So this is why when you look at a knitted fabric, that you see the wale, the one that goes vertically, the vertical row, and then you see the horizontal row. They are not in 90 degree with each other. The horizontal row is slightly tilted, and this is because it is not knitting one row per circular. It knits several rows as it goes. So this creates that slight slanting effect, and the more slanting it is, the faster it has gone, and the worse quality, unfortunately. Cheap equals most of the time worse quality. So you want to have like a good, you find a good in between middle, because also when it is slanting so much, it could start to twist because it wants to, it's not only because that's not the only reason why it's twisting. It could also be something like how all the threads has been spun, if they have been spun also in the same direction or different direction. Like it's complicated. But this is a little tell. If it's very much slanting, then it maybe is not the best quality, because this twisting issue is very common, unfortunately, when it comes to knitted fabrics.
Yeah, it's very true, and you sometimes you can tell a little bit, but it's also sometimes unfortunately not really shown until you wash the fabric. Yeah, because then the twisting is going to be quite visible if the fabric is, as you say, not perhaps done in more of the cheap, speedy version. Yeah, it's usually unfortunately when you start wearing the garment or wash the fabric. Yeah,
and some knitting structures, most knitting structure may be more common on actual knitted sweaters. Like they tend to grow widthwise but shrink lengthwise. Yeah. It depends a little bit on the structure. So that could also be a little bit tricky. So this is why also when you wash knitted fabrics, like if it has a lot of structure, the fabric, it might be better to have it on a more delicate wash program because otherwise things can happen to the fabric.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was such a fascinating topic. Thank you, Malena, for again sharing your expertise. I love doing these episodes. And if you haven't, I also recommend going back to the fibers episode, which you it's such a illuminating, fascinating topic where you talk about all the fibers and the properties, and I guess these are the kind of episodes that I love to do the most, I think, because I learned so much myself, and I guess with this kind of deeper understanding that you're sharing with your expertise, I think this is such a key component to everyone out there who sews, which I assume is most of our listeners. Having this kind of knowledge, and it's going to vastly improve the end result, and that's why we'd like to do this more technical and a little bit nerdy episodes as well, because it's just not about sewing techniques and all that kind of thing. It's picking the right fabric, understanding fibers, understanding structures. All these things are absolutely crucial when you're making your own clothes, because the garment industry, they have already made the decision for you, but we have to try to figure that out for ourselves. So, and it's not easy, because sometimes a sewing pattern instruction may be called for knit fabric with 30% stretch, but that can be a huge range of different type of fabrics, which is also why we did this guide in our book Fit for Knits, where we show and tell both the properties and of course the type of garment that is best suited for this type of fabric. And I don't know, I think we'll probably list about 30 or 25 different type of knit fabrics, so there's a lot. So if you're feeling underwhelmed, we definitely hear you, because it's a big variation of all the kind of knit fabrics that we are able to expose to and are able to pick from.
Yeah, and it's so important, as I said, to choose the right fabric to the right pattern, because if you have a really tight fitted t-shirt that is supposed to be in 1x1 rib, and then you choose a single jersey 100% cotton, it's not gonna work. You have to choose the right fabric to what it's constructed towards, or go up in size or something. Yeah, it is so important to read carefully. It's usually mentioned very carefully. It should be mentioned carefully in the sewing instructions, what kind of fabric it is suitable and what kind of stretch it is. And we have said this before, if it is 30% stretch, it means that you should be able to pull out the fabric 30% at a minimum. More, it's no problem, but like at a minimum 30 or 40%, whatever it says. So it doesn't have anything about the material composition there. It's just mean how much percentage you are able to stretch it out. That's going to give you an indication if how comfortable it's going to be when you wear it. If the fabric doesn't stretch that much, it will feel tight when wearing.
Yeah, very, very true. Very good final words. And again, thank you, Malena, for being such an expert on this topic and sharing it to all our listeners. We are so grateful for you for learning all these kind of things. And I even though I've been sewing for over 40 years, I still learn a ton from you, Malena. So I'm very, very grateful for that. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.